Welcome back, everybody, to the Assertive Podcast. I'm Erica.
I'm Jess.
And we are licensed professional counselors in Texas reviewing Am I the Asshole Reddit threads to help you learn skills for communication, healthy boundary setting, and assertive interpersonal functioning. Today, we are continuing our series of emotions with guilt. Tuesday, we talked about general psychoeducation with guilt. Today, we're going to get into some more skills that you can use when experiencing guilt. And we're going to start off by reviewing our Am I the Asshole post titled, Am I the Asshole for Feeling Guilty About This? I'm 15 years old. My mother went and picked up my check today for me from work while I was at school, which was unexpected, but I was grateful for. She texts me to inform me she picked it up and then proceeds to ask me to buy dinner. Now, me and my mom have a pretty laid back relationship and we're always joking around. So I responded, "What?" with 2 broken heart emojis, thinking that we were both playing around. Then I asked if she wanted sushi since that's what I wanted. All of a sudden, her whole mood changed and she says, "Damn, I'll buy my own dinner." Trying to set my own boundaries with her, I say I was joking and I only want to spend $100 on food because there's something else I'd really like to buy. She says, "Yeah, you always hit me with the what and dangs when I ask for food. Won't ever ask again, but see you later." Now, 2 days ago, I let her borrow $125 to buy my sister some clothes, and then I bought dinner for everybody, which cost around $50. And 3 days before that, I spent $150 on Red Lobster for her and one of her friends who wasn't even there. I don't understand why she's acting like this when I never said no, and I even offered up the money. Anytime I don't want to spend my money on her food, she finds a way to make me feel guilty. They provided an update. She did end up buying food with my money, even after saying she wasn't going to ask me again to buy food. Am I the asshole? Mm-hmm. You want to do quick guilt summary?
Sure. The summaries.
I know there's so many all the time.
So guilt, the function of guilt is to let us know when we've broken somebody else's rules. So these could be these are rules within the various systems in which we are a part of. So these can be rules within our family of origin, our friend group, society at large. These could be laws. There's obviously consequences for violating the rules of others. Too much guilt, we become over-responsible. This is where we're inclined towards inappropriate guilt and where we are feeling guilty for rules that either aren't ours or aren't ours to enforce. And then if not enough guilt, this is where we become an offender. So this could be just rubbing people the wrong way or actually committing, criminal offenses, kind of a disregard for other people. We went briefly into the guilt anger cycle. And after all of that, we did determine that the author isn't an asshole. She's 15 and she's young. She's obviously got some improvement for boundary setting that could be set. We did agree that mom's an asshole. Mom is being manipulative, using some guilt, and probably knows better and is kind of advantage of her daughter in that situation. So we said mom has more asshole ownership in this post. Did I miss anything in the summary? That was a lot of recap.
It was a lot of recap, but I think you got it all. I'm sure some of it will naturally overlap into this episode, but if you guys really want to make sure we didn't miss anything, you can go re-listen to Guilt Part 1.
Yeah. I think guilt can be a hard emotion to work through in therapy. I normally start, we talk about just it lets us know when we've broken the rule of others. And so I usually start off with clients of being like, well, what are the rules of others?
Yeah.
And we do that by what we talked about, the core belief work. So within the framework of cognitive behavioral therapy, we all have these core beliefs that are developed over time. And whenever we are hit with some kind of internal or external trigger, it's going to interact with our core beliefs. And that's what's going to produce our thoughts, automatic thoughts, thought habits. And then that cycle continues. So digging around in core beliefs can be difficult because they're deep. And I tell a client, a core belief sounds like a thought, but it's the most simplified basic version of that cannot be broken down any further. It's personality bedrock. Is kind of how I describe it. So what is your process for like talking through a client to wiggle down some core belief work?
I do the intro very similar as far as introducing core beliefs. When we get into how do we identify these, I tell them we're going to pretend like we're 5 and we're just going to keep asking why. And eventually when we don't have any other why, or it's that's just the way it is, that's most likely a core belief. So it's, I have to get straight A's. Why? That's what my parents expect of me. Why? Well, because they want me to have a good job. Why? Being financially independent is important. Why? Money equals worth in our family. Why? It just does. Okay, that's probably a core belief.
If I don't have a good earning, I'm worthless. Something like that.
Yes. Yeah. So we just play that why game, and sometimes they get flustered, and sometimes I did that really quickly and just kind of made up some answers, and they were all very loosely connected there.
Yeah.
But usually it goes a bit slower. They struggle as we get closer to the core belief. They kind of struggle with why are we doing it this way? Sometimes they don't really know the why. Sometimes they know the why, but they don't want to say it because it just feels icky, right? Saying in my family, our worth is tied to how much money we bring in.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel very good to say out loud.
Right. I'm sure if you were to ask any family member, they'd be like, no, of course we don't think that. But when you watch everybody operate, we obviously have that belief system in the family. Yeah. I like that. Why? Sometimes, I guess it depends sometimes on the initial like kind of thought habit, but sometimes I like to ask the question, if that were true, then what? If that was true, then what would that mean? I'm kind of like finding some of those big, and I think when I'm doing core belief work with a client, when they verbalize one, you could tell it like hits them like right in the dick. They're like, oh God, that like right in the chest, like, oh, I felt that. Like that is a guttural foundational thought, I think. And it can be really satisfying when you really get like a core belief. So let's say, okay, so if we use the example, money is worth, let's say that's the core belief that we identified. How would you work with a client if that is their core belief and they do feel guilt? What would you have them do with that core belief?
Then I would probably pull in a lot of the thought techniques and kind of basic CBT techniques that we talked about in, I want to say it was anxiety week 2. So we do some thought stopping.
Yep.
And try and catch ourselves when we're having this thought. So we stop it from being an automatic thought to being a mindful thought. And we're increasing our awareness to this. One that just shows, I think, for a lot of my clients, how impactful this core belief is. If we only experience this at work or on payday, it may not be that impactful. If we're noticing this core belief popping up every day, this is a pretty impactful core belief for you.
Yeah.
I do what we call cognitive reframing. So we look to reframe that. So there may be some beneficial purposes of this core belief. So can we keep that and get rid of maybe the harmful portions of this core belief? And then I do thought challenging. And so what would the opposite of this be? So you think about, in part 1, we talked about recovering Catholics.
Yeah.
But if you think about people who go into service within the Catholic religion, they usually take a vow of poverty. So what is their worth if they're not bringing any money? Is that to say they have no worth?
That's to find ways to kind of like challenge that
core belief. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, can we find examples where you think people who don't bring in a certain dollar amount have internal and external value or internal external worth? And then we challenge that. So if this is true for them, why are you the exception to this rule?
Yeah. So even though the core beliefs are maybe quote unquote deeper than the thoughts, you're going to start because the thoughts can be noticed. So you're going to start addressing the thoughts and having them reframe it. And then over time, that core belief will get revised once they're consistent and kind of battling those thoughts.
Yes. So we kind of chip away at it bit by bit, and we kind of fact check. Basically, then it gets fact checked enough because we start reframing it that eventually that core belief is no longer true. It's, this is my family's belief system, and I don't abide by this.
Yeah.
Then you get to throw in some rebellion, which I think a lot of clients naturally like to think like, oh, I get to rebel with this? I've been so compliant.
Like, there you go. Rock the whole system. Be an offender. Yeah. And I like that, talking about, with the family of origin. I like a lot of times, just asking, like, is that a rule you still want to follow? Is that a rule you want to have? And most of the time they'll say no if it's something that's causing them distress. And it's hard to change a core. I think core beliefs take a long time to change because there are these presuppositions that we can't just, now that I know this thing about me, let's just change that. We're still going to be wired that way. So it does take time. Especially as an adult, we get to decide, like the roles that we play in our family systems too. And I'd like to ask them, do you still want to be that person? Do you still want to be the person who holds the traditions or who plans the events or who is the black sheep or whatever it is that your role is in the family? You can rewrite that narrative too, because with roles come rules also. And so we can kind of assess some of those as well.
I think clients get some empowerment out of that and being able to take control and change their narrative and saying, just because this is the role they set up on you does not mean this is the role you have to play.
And then the outpouring of that would be boundaries. We have behavioral changes that would come about, or you're operating differently. So it's this whole kind of if you give a mouse a cookie kind of process with the core beliefs. And some core beliefs are good. maybe a belief is God is real or whatever. That could be an adaptive core belief.
Absolutely.
We're going to have some that have, I think, some core beliefs that are more useful and true than other core beliefs. But good to look at those.
As you say that, it made me think of kind of the list of questions that we ask for kind of differentiating between adaptive and maladaptive thoughts. So it's, is it kind?
Is it necessary? Is it helpful? Is it honest?
And is it honest? Yeah. It's kind of 4 questions you can go through. So as you guys are increasing mindfulness, becoming more aware of your automatic thoughts, you're figuring out, is this something I should tackle now? Is this even maladaptive? For asking ourselves this very basic template. Then, if you're getting no to all 4 of those, that's probably top priority. If we're getting no to 1 of those and 3 yeses, and we have some other ones that are 4 no's, that one's probably more adaptive than it is maladaptive, and that can be put on the back burner.
It's easy to take people's inventory. I think, especially when we get into core beliefs, if we find out some really, icky family rule, to not be judgmental of the family system, so. And there are times where we make a legitimate mistake and there's legitimate damage that's been done. Our guilt is appropriate and proportionate, and we need to deal with the owning our side of the street, and accountability looks like healthy guilt. I know you remember better the episodes where we talked about the anatomy of an apology. I can't remember which one.
I don't know 100%. If I had to make my best educated guess, I would direct you guys to fair fighting. Or
what was the one, bias or boundaries? Was it in there too?
That's what it was, bias or boundaries, where tells the secret, and I think we go into how would we do repair work. I think we talked about anatomy of an apology in there. So yeah. See, you remembered. You didn't need me.
I got it. Yeah, we had to talk it out. Yeah, and so I wanted to revisit the anatomy of an apology, and then even to get into some kind of basics of empathizing and some reflective listening, because I think we all make mistakes. So knowing how to own that and to correctly resolve guilt, I think if you're able to verbalize it and talk it out, that can really nip that in the butt versus like those laying awake for 20 years later thinking about all the things that you did wrong that you just never dealt with. The elephant in the room kind of experience is really uncomfortable. So I think just sometimes getting out in the open with guilt can really resolve that emotion so you're not carrying it with you. So let's say that you have made a blunder and you're guilt appropriate. How do you apologize? The first thing I say is do not say sorry if you're going to do it again. So wait to apologize until you know that you are going to make an effort to not engage in that behavior again. Nothing's worse than saying sorry for the same thing over and over again. People don't take you seriously. So once you know that in yourself, that you are ready to do something different, the word sorry is even overplayed. So I like to start with, I apologize because, and then you have to list a very specific thing that you did. This shows that you are not beating around the bush or you're not owning it fully. You're going to empathize with how that made them feel. And then you're going to ask if there's anything that you can do to make it right. So an example, let's say
mom in this post goes to therapy, gets Jess, and Jess sets her straight.
Oh, okay.
How would mom apologize?
Ooh, I like this one. Okay. So I would say, if I was coaching mom, I'd say, I apologize for continuing to ask for your money when you're working hard and using it on things that are frivolous and unnecessary that probably makes you feel disrespected and taken advantage of. I won't do that again. Is there anything I can do to make that right? Be an example. So that shows that I'm like, I've done some introspection. I know what I've done wrong. I'm being specific and I'm also empathizing. After that, sometimes if you guess what you're apologizing for, sometimes you don't guess right. And so you also want to say, is there anything I've left out? Or is there anything that I've missed here? Because you want to give that other person time. Lots of times, if you give a really good apology, most people are going to say, no, there's nothing you need to do. I really appreciate you saying sorry. Some people will have some stuff, but you still want to give that other person time to vent a little bit more. And you're going to stay in that same pattern of, yeah, I can see why that would hurt your feelings. That probably really made you feel whatever. You're going to keep reflecting that. So that's the framework of apology. I apologize because that probably made you feel blank. I won't do it again. What can I do to make it right? This also assumes that somebody is able to empathize.
Yes.
Which the average person or average listener is not very good. So
we don't know. We don't know their empathy levels. They could be.
True. I mean, they're not therapy
people.
That's true. So there's this concept called evaluating empathy, and I like this level system. So I would teach this with my male clients. They love talking about communication skills, but the average guy is not a very good listener. So this breaks it down into formula, which I really like. So I'll kind of go over that now. There's basically 5 levels to empathy. Level 1, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, and 5. So I guess 6 levels. So level 1 is what I think a lot of us encounter in a day-to-day listener. Level 1 is where somebody shares something and the person's response basically significantly detracts from the subject. So that could look like giving advice, shifting the focus away from whatever the person's sharing, talking about yourself. So this is like you are not acknowledging the emotions, you're not acknowledging anything that this person said, you're just flipping it. This can lots of times come from somebody being uncomfortable with emotions. Or I would tell my client, if somebody's sharing something with you and you respond about yourself, you are a selfish person. If everything somebody says reminds you of yourself, you're probably selfish. So sometimes it's just, that's where we're at, right? So if level 2 is, I find if we find a level 2 person in day-to-day life, we would consider them a good listener. Level 2 is responding to the content only. I think our standards for listening is low. So this is somebody kind of repackaging what we've explained and pairing it back to us. So it could be like, so if this was, let's say the mom talking to the daughter, you say you don't like it when I go to pick up your paycheck and then I invite myself out to dinner and use your money. I'm just reflecting back the general content. A level 2.5 would be you're only responding to a feeling. So again, in this example, you feel resentful. I'm just giving a single feeling word, not reflecting content. So level 1, I'm deflecting. Level 2, I'm only responding to content. Level 2.5 is only feeling. At level 3, I'm doing both content and feeling. So you feel disrespected because I'm taking your paycheck and using it to buy frivolous things for myself that I don't really need. So I'm giving an emotion and a content. Level 4 is what's called an additive. So this is going to give a deeper meaning because you're communicating something that is unspoken. So this shows that you're kind of picking up on the person's emotional cues. So you feel resentful because I'm taking advantage of your paycheck and buying frivolous things for myself. And you would like for me to ask first before I invite myself to your things. So I'm reading between the lines. And then level 5 is sometimes something unspoken, like a goal or maybe a want. We're looking at like a barrier to something. So you feel resentful because I keep taking your money